Welcome to the Sisterhood of Limitless Living. I'm Dr. April Moreno, autoimmune wellness researcher and professional helping women around the world to live their best possible lives despite the autoimmune condition. Listen in as we speak on various topics about the autoimmune journey and interview amazing and inspiring women who are living and thriving despite their autoimmune condition. Let's get started. Hello, Sisterhood. Welcome to another episode of the Sisterhood of Limitless Living. Today, we're going to be talking about health and wellness in the autoimmune world. And so today, I'm welcoming Emily Brown and her work with autoimmune women, the autoimmune public, and sharing her story as well. Welcome, Emily. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. April. It is a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do.
I am a certified health and wellness coach, and I specialize in helping women who have chronic autoimmune conditions take back their health after they've been diagnosed recently or if they've been dealing with it for a while. So really take back their health and help them navigate this new world so that they can start to feel better, look better if that's what they want, and also regain some zest and energy to live life on their terms and live a life they'll love.
Do you work with women? Do you work with all ages? Have you worked with men as well? What types of autoimmune diseases have you seen?
So that's a great question. I do primarily work with women, and that's just what I prefer, but I'm not opposed to working with men if that's what, if they are looking for someone to help them. So I've worked with women primarily, and the ages have been, 20s to 40s or right before 40. Some of the conditions that I'm seeing more prevalent are lupus, definitely, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the hypothyroidism, and also endometriosis, celiac disease. Those are some of the more common ones that I'm seeing right now.
As we talk about the autoimmune experience, could you tell us a little bit about how you got into this field?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I'll try to keep this brief, Dr. April, because it can be a long story. So I was initially diagnosed with my first of 3 autoimmune conditions over a decade ago. I had just had our first child, and months after that, I started getting these mysterious symptoms, which is very common in, the autoimmune world. I didn't know what was going on. Initially, some people were thinking like, are you pregnant again? Because I had swelling, kind of bloated all the time. And I had other symptoms that I couldn't explain, like not necessarily related to pregnancy, but they were my hair was kind of getting thinner. My skin was really dry. I was very, very tired all the time, like there wasn't enough sleep that I could get that would make me feel better in the morning. Dealing with all of those things, and I just didn't know what was happening. And it wasn't until a friend of the family told me and suggested that I go see an endocrinologist to have my thyroid checked, which at the time I'd never heard of an endocrinologist. I never knew what a thyroid was. Mm-hmm. And so I was very intrigued and I was hopeful at that point, because at that point I just didn't know what was going on. I did go to the doctor eventually. They prescribed me some medicine and told me that I had this condition called Hashimoto's and explained what it is. And for those people who don't know, it does affect the thyroid, which is a little gland that sits at the base of your neck, and it controls a lot of different things. And it played a very vital role in metabolism and your body temperature and things like that. So it explained why, for instance, like I was cold all the time and I couldn't lose the weight and I was retaining water and things like that. And so that kind of started my journey with autoimmunity and understanding what that means for your body and what it means for your life. And it was at that point I realized, going through, the process of getting on medication, trying to find treatments that work for me, going to different practitioners, really just experimenting, trial and error, trying to figure out what was going on with my body and what it needed at that time, that I learned to be my own best advocate and learning the importance of being in tune with what your body is going through and then being willing to try different things to see what it needs. From there, it's been a long journey, 10 years, and I've been diagnosed with unfortunately, other autoimmune conditions. The latest one has been vitiligo. So that has been, definitely challenging, like seeing your body change in that way and your skin change. I've learned, though, that there are ways to manage your condition. There are even ways to put your autoimmunity into remission. And so my health coaching business is born out of that desire to help other women figure out what they need to heal their bodies, to put things into remission, and then to really help them kind of live a whole life again. Because as you probably know, once you've been diagnosed, your mind goes through a lot of different things. Your body is going through a lot of different things. Your whole life is turned upside down. So I really love and enjoy helping women kind of navigate what that looks like for them.
Share with us your story of how faith has gotten you through the most difficult challenges in your autoimmune journey.
That's a great question. And I was so happy to see that you were talking about that on Twitter, and I came across that recently. I think faith has a lot to do with healing in general. And I subscribe that there's a biblical definition of faith, which says faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you don't see. So, and that's certainly, when you're going through a condition, an illness, and you're trying to figure out how to overcome a condition, you don't see the end of the road all the time. So it is so important to believe that healing is possible and it's available to you. It's just you're figuring out how to get there. And I think of it like a map. Your body can give you clues and directions and where to go, but you got to be willing to listen and kind of tune into it. But I do think it is possible to find healing. And I think faith is so critical to that. For me, I'm a Christian, so I lean on what the Bible says about healing. And throughout especially the New Testament, when Jesus Christ was doing his ministry, his whole ministry, a lot of his ministry actually was just going around city to city, healing people. And so I believe that if that's sort of how he operates, then it's available to me too. I know that was a long time ago, but I believe that healing is still available to a lot of people and miracles still do happen. And like I said earlier, I was really praying through my journey and figuring out, okay, like, Lord, what do I need to do? Please show me, and just asking, kind of begging, because I needed answers and I wanted answers. And I was willing to do the work. I was like, okay, whatever I need to do, if I need to eliminate something from my diet, like I did with gluten, then I'll do that. If it's something else, and I'll try that too. And I have tried other approaches, eating patterns, to figure out what would work for me. And if it was lifestyle, if I needed to get more rest, if I needed to relieve stress in some kind of way, then let me figure that out as well. But, there are different approaches to activating that healing. You can pray about it, like I did, and pray and ask for the healing. But then sometimes it's like spontaneous healing and I didn't really do anything, but it happened. So I think, God does give us great gifts in that, but faith is so critical. But even in the absence of faith, we can achieve healing. But I think it's just so part of the process of, figuring things out, and then also finding hope in the journey too, because there's nothing worse than getting a diagnosis and then feeling like that's it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I just got to be on this medication forever, or I just have to do this treatment forever. I mean, maybe, but I don't want to feel resentful about my condition. That's why I had to learn how to redirect my thoughts and look at my condition differently. Otherwise, it would just consume me and then I'd feel depressed all over again. So I am all about having good quality of life. Like, I don't know when my last day on earth will be, but at least I'm going to try to do whatever I can to make this time that I have the best that it can be, whether I have a condition or not. And so the fact that I do have 3, then I'm just going to make the most of it and work with it and just have faith that, God is going to bring healing in his timing, and just believe that it is possible.
This was actually the most critical and crucial part of my healing and my remission and my wellness, is that point. And it happened the day I was at the emergency room and they gave me the diagnosis. My first response was humility, because I was just like, this is bigger than me. This is so much of, I don't know what this is. Am I going to die from this? I don't know. I don't have the right to be angry. I don't have the right to say that I know what I'm doing. And so it was this moment, like you said, that pleading with God, and just opening myself up to God, whatever you want me to become from this, I'm open. If I'm going to be disabled for the rest of my life, if I'm going to be living for the rest of my days in a wheelchair, I'm okay with it. I just said, whatever you want from me, I'm here. I'm open.
Wow.
I will not have fear. I mean, I was, of course, totally afraid, but I was just like, I'm going to accept whatever is going on right now. And I'm just going to be led by you, because this is out of my control completely. Yeah. And it just gave me this sense of humility and this sense of like, it just totally changed me. It did. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't have the right to say anything about this. And I'm going to do what I can to get better, learn from this, and help others. And that's really where my coaching business, this whole past 2-3 years of work has started. It did stem from this conversation with God, where it's just like, I'm yours, do whatever you want with this diagnosis.
Wow.
And it's beautiful because, like you said, the healing actually, it came.
Yep.
The ability to help other people, it showed up. And it's just been a beautiful journey.
Wow.
And I love what you said, though, about just knowing that with faith, very powerful things can happen, the miracles. It's crucial. It's just
It
crucial.
is. You just gave me chills, Dr. April. I love that. I love hearing your story too. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that the fact that you surrendered. You completely surrendered to, okay, well, what is happening to my body? I realize I don't have control of this, but there are other things that I do have control over. And that part and that humility that you talked about, I think it's amazing. I mean, when you do, like, going back to the Bible, like, there are so many people who were like, I need help, Jesus. Like, there were two blind men. I think they were along the side of the road. They heard Jesus was coming and they just yelled out, please, have mercy on me, help me. So I think it does healing, or I should say humility precedes healing. And if we don't have that, I think we could be blocking that healing process. So I think your story is amazing too. That's incredible. I could probably talk about that for a long time, but I'm just so glad you're doing this and you're shining a light on this connection between faith and healing and recovery and putting your condition in remission. I think it's so, so vital, and we need more of this conversation happening.
Yeah, and that's why the podcast and the community is called the Sisterhood of Limitless Living, because it is about staying positive. And I know there's people out there that call it toxic positivity. They call it all kinds of stuff, right? But it's just really important for us to know what we can do, opening up to what we have no control over, and then doing the things we can do and seeing. I love what you said about seeing this as an opportunity.
Yeah.
This challenge is an opportunity for us to grow as human beings, to help other people. And so the Limitless Living message is about limitless living despite any life challenge, because autoimmune disease could be your current challenge. It may not be the worst thing that ever happens to you. There could be more to come. We just don't know. Yes. There's so many other things out there. This is one thing in the journey.
Yep. So, yeah, that's
remain
incredible.
Limitless.
I love that. Yeah, and I was going to ask you where the origin of that came from, but I mean, it's self-explanatory, but I love that you explained it now, just that it is about not just overcoming a condition, but really thriving, and living your life despite of it. And I'm truly a proponent of that. And I mean, yes, get the rest that you need if you need to, and take care of yourself and remove yourself from situations if you need to replenish. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you have to limit yourself. So that's why I love the name of your podcast and your website. It's amazing.
Thank you. Could you share a little bit more with us about how you were able to get your health under your control? What were some examples of things that you did?
So one of the things that, like I said, I did go to different practitioners. I tried, I went to my endocrinologist. I tried things like some alternative, what would be considered alternative medicine. They worked to an extent. Obviously, being on medication, helped restore the hormones that were not being produced. But I knew that there was something else that I needed to do, because I was still suffering from like the chronic fatigue. I was dealing with depression, and I didn't really have a reason to feel sad or depressed or anything. So I knew that there were some other things that probably needed to be tweaked. So I started just looking online, and I found some support groups and things like that, where other people who were dealing with the same things were sharing their ideas, sharing their experiences. That alone, just finding people that were going through the same thing, I think is super helpful for people with autoimmunity. That's why I'm so appreciative of even your podcast and shining a light on it and sharing different stories and practices. I think that really helped, knowing that I wasn't alone, but also it helped enlighten me to different things that I could be trying or looking into. One of those things was an understanding of nutrition and how important that is in what role it might play in your autoimmunity. So I remember it was a weekend and I had just made like a pound cake, a lemon pound cake, because I'm from the South. And I was like so ready to eat that pound cake, but it was around the same time that I was doing some research and trying to understand, more about nutrition. And this one particular thing, which was gluten at the time, this was about 8 years ago. Gluten was starting, more awareness was coming around about that. And so I had learned about it and I was like, what is this? This gluten, and understanding that it's a protein in wheat. And then I heard about an elimination diet. So I said, let me just try this and see if it helps me. If I eliminate gluten, which for me included all breads and, things with gluten in it as an ingredient, let's see if it helps me. So I made that pound cake, and at that moment, I was like, I'm not going to eat it. I'm just going to do it cold turkey and see if it helps. And I tell you, within 3 days, Dr. April, I just about all of my symptoms were gone. Like it was like a veil had been lifted and I could see again. I consider it miraculous. I was just like, wow, I've been praying for an answer and a solution, and this was what came along. And it was great that I was willing to try it, because if I hadn't, then I wouldn't have seen the benefit of it. So ever since then, I haven't turned back, and I haven't eaten any gluten. Unfortunately, sometimes there's some accidents happen if I go out to eat, but for the most part, I've been gluten-free, and it's something that I like to share with people as much, because I'm always like, if there's something wrong and you notice something, then maybe it could be something in your diet that you might want to look at. It may not be the gluten for you, but it could be something else. So I'm a huge proponent of, good nutrition as part of the healing process.
Mm-hmm, totally. I always thought that the gluten-free movement was kind of a fad, but then once I actually tried it, it answered so many questions about my own digestion, like things that I have been dealing with since I was a teenager. Things
Wow.
that I always thought it was just me.
Yep.
I'm just that one person who always has these digestive issues. That's just me, right? But
Wow.
once I stopped eating gluten, immediately those problems disappeared. I was like, I don't have to be that person anymore. This is amazing.
I know. I am right there with you. Exactly. And it's interesting. So you've been dealing with your challenges for a while then. And for me, it started in my 20s. But there is something to be said about what happens when you've been diagnosed with a chronic condition. It just changes the way you see yourself. I actually did a podcast recently about that. Like it changes the way you view yourself. And as women, we are already dealing with quote unquote expectations of the world, but I think it does something else. But I think it can be a gift too. I can see it as this is an opportunity for me to really take care of my body, to really be in tune with what my body is saying and have a better relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I try to look at autoimmunity as that, as, an opportunity for me to take better care of myself.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I love that you're saying that it's not necessarily always a negative thing. It's an opportunity to listen in to our bodies. I love that. I totally agree. So could you share some experiences of maybe some of the things that your clients have faced? Privacy,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the great changes that they saw as a result of their
Yeah.
diet and other things that they made changes to.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. With the diet, I've seen some people actually, when they do change their diet, for one, they see that their mood changes. I think that can be attributed to the fact that they feel more empowered and more in control of what they feed themselves. Because, for a lot of people, you just it's like mindless eating sometimes. And, I do the same thing every once in a while. When you look at your diet as it relates to your condition, you just automatically become more mindful, because you realize there's a direct connection between what I eat and how I'm going to feel, in an hour or two or the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I've noticed and I've heard a lot, is that, when I eat better, when I'm focusing on nutrition and not necessarily calories or, I have to lose weight or something like that, but they're eating for the benefits of nourishing foods, the achiness goes away, the depression goes away, the feeling of I'm out of control goes away. So I think that's a huge win for a lot of people, is just feeling like I have control over what I eat. I can choose to eat this ice cream or I can choose to eat this salad, and I'm empowered to do that. And I love that coaching facilitates that for a lot of people. People have goals and visions for their lives. And I see how when you're coaching someone, it really helps to put things in context and to connect what they're doing for their health and wellness to a bigger vision of their life. Working on themselves and investing in self-care helps to facilitate that as well. So I'm seeing like coaching is really holistic. And I'm sure you see it too with your clients, but it's not just I'm here to feel better, but I'm here because I don't feel well, and that's impacting the rest of my life. So it's really powerful to see women walk through that and then have those revelations about, making that connection between how I'm feeling and how I look and what I'm eating or my lifestyle has a lot to do with the rest of my life, and it all interconnects.
There's all the connections of how we're feeling and how it interacts with the rest of our lives.
I know.
The physical health and then everything else.
It does. It really does.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast. You mentioned it.
Yeah.
You have a podcast as well.
I know. So I've been really, it's just been great because initially I started the podcast because I really wanted another way to connect with people. I realized like not everybody's going to work with me. And also it allows people to kind of see who I am and to make the decision if they're on the fence, or considering working with me, to give them a glimpse into who I am and how I think and how I approach things. But it's been really fun, and it's been really gratifying to hear people come back and say, oh, I listened to your podcast. I love it. I didn't know about, or, people who didn't know about autoimmune conditions learn a little bit more and have that different perspective. What I like about the podcast is it gives me an opportunity to give a lens into what it means to have an autoimmune condition. And obviously my experience is going to be different from yours and many other women, but I think there is some commonality between one condition and another. And so it just injects another voice that's about autoimmune condition, hopefully, and shed some new light on how we're coping with it and how we are thriving despite of having some certain symptoms. So it's been fun.
Journey. It's been much more fun than I anticipated.
As I'm doing the podcast, I'm also growing my business. So they're kind of growing up together, but I find that the podcast helps me really celebrate, the progress that I'm making in, serving more women. It's sort of serving as like a marker of like success, like, oh, I did 3 podcasts, like great. Okay. But it motivates me to keep going because I realize there is a huge need. I mean, there are 50 million Americans, I think, that have an autoimmune condition, and 75% of them are women. So there's a need out there. We need more people aware that there is support for them. So hopefully that's, helping them to see that there's hope out there and there's support available for them.
I'm also noticing around the world that people are listening to the podcast. There are people in Ireland, the UK. Wow. There's someone in Thailand and Vietnam who's listening to my podcast. And it's just like, wow, someone needs to hear about autoimmune wellness out there in different parts of the world. And I'm really, it's just a wonderful opportunity to connect with people that we have not met and out and sharing that message of information and resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's another thing too. I think it's so important that those of us who've walked the walk and been through this journey for some time to give back in whatever way we can. So I like what you just said about giving resources too, because I think that's really critical.
How can we find out more about you? How can we connect with you?
I do have a website. It's emilybrownhealthcoach.com. And I do have, ways to contact me there. So if someone wants to reach out, they can do that. They can also email me directly at info@emilybrownhealthcoach.com. You can also find me on Twitter and on Instagram right now. I'm trying to work on my social media presence. So if you don't see much when you go there, just please be patient with me because I'm there, just not as present as I'd like to be right now because I'm trying to manage everything and not trying to overwhelm myself too. And I'm just so thankful for this opportunity to share and to talk to your audience as well. And you've been doing amazing work. So thank you so much for what you're doing, Dr. April.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for being here and sharing your experience with us. We do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Dr. April.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, the stories that we've been sharing, the information and guidance and support for the autoimmune community and the integrative wellness community as a whole. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe on iTunes. Leave us a review. It is always appreciated. You can also find us at aprilmorenophd.com. Until next time.